Welcome back to your favorite St. Louis sports podcast, The Lounatics. I'm your host, Tyler, here with another fun episode to discuss all the happenings here in St. Louis. We've got some interesting things and potential controversy with the Blues, some less interesting things, and hopefully something that may or may not happen with the Cardinals, and then all sorts of excitement with St. Louis City SC as they're announcing some of their upcoming schedules, as what not just for the draw for the upcoming Champions League, but as well as the schedule release for the upcoming season. John, what do you have?
I have nothing that you didn't just say. I do want to warn our listeners, if they're not watching, if they're listening on, their favorite podcast app, they don't know that you poured essentially a pint of whiskey over there to drink. And I've got two beers ready because we have so much to go over that there's a good chance I'm going to need both of them just so that my,
I got a
voice doesn't
beer
get
for
dry.
backup.
Ooh, look at you.
I'm already ready. So in case I decide I need to break it up a
Yeah.
little,
Well, and liquor before beer, you're in the clear. Like that's smart,
I
You
do
tell
have
you
to
went to
work in the
college.
morning, so it's going to may hurt in the morning, but I'll be there.
That's all we can ask, right? It's all be there. That's basically my approach to this podcast.
Yeah, that's been your approach to a lot of things in life.
It has
I
been.
remember on more than one occasion it was, "Hey John, we need to do this." You're like, "I'll be there," and you were there, and I guess that counts for something.
It does. It's the thought that counts,
Hmm, or something.
or something.
So, uh, let's jump right into the Blues here. So, we'll start off and kind of kick it off. The Blues are still in their up and down ways. After tonight, they're just above a point per game because they somehow beat the Florida Panthers in
That was
Florida.
amazing.
After absolutely getting destroyed by Vegas a couple nights ago.
Was it
It comes back to
Vegas?
the
Was it the
absolute,
Lightning?
or it was Tampa Bay. You're right. It was Tampa
Yeah,
Bay Lightning. We got destroyed by. Either
that was
way,
embarrassing. The,
it's
the the score, not this interaction.
my issue is that the Blues team is still the same Blues team. It's you don't know what you're going to get night to night. Nothing is changing. Well, some things are changing, I guess. And first and foremost is, what did I say during our last episode? It's been just over a week ago. Is that I said bad players or players not performing will get good coaches fired. And then what happened 15 minutes after we finished recording?
Craig Berube got fired. And the best part about this, if there is a best part, is our like immediate, like all caps messages to each other. Like, what the fuck is happening? Of course, we just fucking recorded and this happened. And like too late now. Just gonna have to wait.
Yeah, well, and then you were going on vacation, leaving
Right.
me here in Missouri, fend for myself.
It's
Thanks a
true.
lot.
Vacation was awesome. Missed
Yeah,
you.
well, I hope it better have been. It would have been better with me.
It would have been.
Yeah,
But anyway, so a point per game. They are
just over a point per game.
just over a point per
It's like
game. Yeah.
1.0 something points per game.
Yeah. 33 points in 32 games. So they are really killing it. Currently on track for you to lose a bet against me still. Um, but they're only 1 point out of the wild card. So like they suck, but so do everyone else. Um, so I mean they've got a legitimate chance here making the playoffs still.
So
I mean we're
I want to talk about, yeah, they still have a chance to make the playoffs. I don't know whether I like or hate that right now. I have mixed feelings, and a lot of that is, what is this team actually constructed to be able to do? And the more I watch it, there's so much potential. It reminds me of my one of my favorite quotes is the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Mhm.
The road to terrible teams is paved with great potential. Uh,
Right. It's what happens when
and
you build a team on its potential and not its actual like current ability.
or you sign players to massive contracts based on their potential without truly seeing the ability. And I'm not, and we all know who I'm talking about, so we'll get into that more in a minute. But Army and Doug Armstrong and I've I've appreciated Doug Armstrong over the years a lot. He's done a lot of great things. He's the one who built this team into what it was. I mean, if those of you who remember I think it was 05 to 08 range, 05 to 09 range, we were absolutely terrible. Blues were awful. I mean, we got some very high draft picks, but that's how we drafted well. We supplemented well, but that's how we ended up with the likes of TJ Oshie and, David Perron and David Backus. And, the list goes on. We got some great players because we were a terrible team. And then we traded and supplemented. We built that team, and then we became a contender for a long stretch. And Army built that. So, I don't want to take anything against Army. He put together the team that won the Stanley Cup. He did pick Mike Yeo to be in charge of that team, which we all know was a mistake. But he got rid of Yeo and brought in Berube, who was the right guy for the job, got the job done, took us to the Stanley Cup. We won the Stanley Cup. I don't feel like since we won the Stanley Cup, Armstrong's ability to develop this roster and fill it out has been subpar at best. I feel like we've had a multitude of poor contract choices, and it really all stems for me the more and more I look at it. And actually, I think J.R. Rutherford, I think, put out an article on The Athletic about this, and we talked a little bit about this last week, but it really starts with, as soon as after the cup was over and we, started letting our key guys walk, because we didn't want to give them no trade clauses or no movement clauses. And says, no, I don't want to give them more power than the owner or the GM. Well, no, for some players, you still need to do that. So instead of giving one player, the power that needed to be to have that lockdown cornerstone of your franchise, instead we gave out all these extra contracts to all these players. And then it came to bite us back in the ass. And over the summer, when we had players exercising no trade clauses because they didn't want to go anywhere and didn't allow us to adjust the roster because those aren't the players we need or what. And, if those of you who have the subscription to The Athletic, I encourage you to go read that article, because it was a lot of things that I was feeling put very well, better into words than I can. But we haven't put together a good team. We haven't put together a team that can compete. It's all based on potential and not off what they can do. And we've let guys who we are proven commodities walk out the door in favor of quote unquote potential. And I think that's what led to Chief getting fired. And then to further that piece is our team is not built to grind. I mean, you look at that team that won the Stanley Cup, they were built to grind and to grind out wins and beat teams into submission. And I don't think that's what Armstrong how he wants to continue to build this team. I felt, and this is going to be the end of my rant before I take a breath so you can actually talk, but I feel like what happened with the Chief hiring is that he brought up Chief just trying to fill until the end of the season, and he was never Armstrong's guy. Armstrong backed him last year because he was winning and kept winning, but he was never truly the guy Armstrong wanted as coach long term. And the way that he built the roster to me was proof of that. And I'm not saying he was looking for an out to get rid of him, but I think it was easy for Armstrong to
pull that trigger,
make Chief the scapegoat, because he wanted a coach that is going to coach a different style, the style that he's been building the roster for.
Yeah. That's an interesting thought. That's not one I've considered. I don't know how I feel about that. I do agree with the middle part of that monologue about the roster constructions, not only with the bad contracts that we've given out, but also the players that we moved away, right? Pietrangelo, right? Ryan O'Reilly, Vladimir Tarasenko, core group guys from that cup run, and they're all gone. And I mean, it has been at this point 4 years, right? You're going to expect some roster turnover, but it was almost immediate that they started shipping guys out. And it hasn't felt the same since that run.
So the season after the COVID issues,
sure.
We looked like the same team that season, but we still had a lot of those guys on the books. They were still on the roster.
Right.
So we lost very few players after that. Really, Pat Maroon was the only big player we lost.
What a run he went on, though.
and then went and won the next 2 titles with Tampa Bay
Yeah.
after he left us. But he was really the big guy that we lost, was the big rig. So we lost the big rig. We still mostly had the team. We looked like we were the best team in the NHL. Then the COVID comes up. We go to the bubble. Players like Steen decide to retire, don't come out to play. We lose some leadership. We lose some stuff, and we just never hit our rhythm in the bubble. When we finally came back, we never looked like the same team. And so I think that was the beginning. Like, I felt like we had a very solid chance with the confidence, the way the team was rolling, to repeat. And then the roster deconstruction really happened after that season.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I 100% agree with all of that. And I don't know, this year's been frustrating. Last year was more frustrating, I think. What's frustrating about this season so far is that there's just no consistency, which you and I have hammered on a lot. But I mean, the morning after that loss to the Lightning, the guys and I at work spent all morning just talking about how bad it was. And then they went out and, put a good beating tonight on Florida. And you don't know which team you're going to get.
I think my issue is that the inconsistency and the ability for players to get up and get ready for games was put on Chief, and that's why he was fired. But I feel like it's a player issue. I mean, like, if players don't want to get up and play, if they just don't have it in them, or if they don't have it in them, or don't have it in them consistently, there's nothing a coach can do to fix that. No. And I think part of the problem is that those are the guys we've given contracts to as a whole. There's still a few guys out there, right, that just grind. I mean, Sammy Blais, I went into depth about him last time. As a guy who's going to go out, he's going to grind, he's going to do his stuff, right? There's players out there. I mean, Bucci's always going to be out there, and he's always going to be game ready. But we have some other players. Kyrou, I'm looking at you.
Let's talk about Kyrou.
I'm focused on Kyrou here a little bit again, because yes, there's more to talk, but he's another one of those players that he's not ready game night in and night out.
Well, I think he's not very much of a two-way player, to put it lightly. And I think that's a large part of it. His offensive production has not been horrible so far this year. The problem is that he's not doing enough to make up for his lack of defense, basically.
His offensive production, if he was not getting paid $8 million, if he was a $3 or $4 million a year player, yeah, his offensive production's fine.
I mean, he's
$8 million a year.
He's got
third on the team
points.
Doesn't mean. But how much? Okay, he had what, 5 or 6 of those over the last few games after he had a fire lit under his ass by getting booed by the home crowd.
Yeah.
So prior to that, he had like 15 points
and then
16 points.
He had 4 after that.
Yeah. So
and I don't know if this is updated through tonight either, to be honest.
But again, my point still stands is, after he had a fire lit on his ass and realized that the entire fan base is looking at you now, you need to be aware of it. He went out and he performed for a couple of games. But
I will say okay, so go ahead and say your piece about how you felt about his statement about Chief.
Because I felt like his initial statement came from an arrogant and just I'm a young player and not aware of how what I say it affects everyone else, and didn't honestly have the come to Jesus realization that, oh yeah, everyone's hanging on my every word because I'm the $8 million player, and I'm one of the guys who has not been consistent night in and night out. So yeah, they're gonna take fire at me because I'm that guy.
Yeah, I took
from
it
his
a
initial comment.
Right. Yeah, just the initial comment.
Just the initial comment.
Especially after I read JR's piece on the interaction, which you and I talked about, that we think was probably
you asked for my initial opinion. So this is before I even read JR's piece.
Okay, fair. I think a popular coach got fired, and you have a player who, although warranted, definitely has that, perception by the fans that he is underperforming. Um, and I think just like Army made Berube the scapegoat for how the team is performing, I think the fans were inclined to find Kyrou as the scapegoat for Chief being fired, which is not true. One player does not get a coach fired. Um, certainly doesn't help. But I definitely read it as just, would you like to talk about the interact like your relationship with him? And it was just, no, he's not my coach. I don't need to answer that. That was how I took it. I'm very much in the minority on that. Um, but yeah.
I I don't I again, I think it comes from a place of arrogance, from aloofness, whatever you want to call it, of not being aware of the situation
Well, and
and
that
not understanding.
I do
Like,
believe.
I think it's a young player who's, I say, yeah, I mean, like, he's a young player, but he's been signed to be one of the franchise cornerstones,
Right.
and he's not ready for it. He's not ready to be a leader. He's getting paid like one, and so everyone's going to look at him to be one.
Right.
He's again, he's what, 25?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't feel like that's an excuse. I mean, like,
Well, yeah, but a
so
25-year-old
this
is
is my
not always
least.
ready to answer all of these questions.
Correct. I don't disagree. What I'm saying is when people say, "Oh, when you're 25, nobody's ready to handle whatever situations." I guarantee you and I both were put in uncomfortable situations at 25 in our career because of what we do that we had to handle professionally.
Right, but I don't necessarily think that comment was unprofessional.
I think it was, again, I think it comes back to the inexperience and being aloof and not being aware of the repercussions of what you say.
No, yeah, I don't have an issue with that, right? I mean,
Um,
here's
and
here's the thing, right? No. Listen, here's the thing, okay? The reporters are sitting there, they're asking you questions, okay? You answer them, okay? You lose sight of it for a moment. That quote gets taken out of context and it becomes a big deal. That's inexperience. That's inexperience as a leader. That's inexperience with dealing with the media. And yes, he has been given this big contract because of his play on the ice, which is previous play on the ice, not this year's, obviously. Um, right. Um, but you still also have to develop the off the ice part too. And not everyone is going to be great with the media. There are some very, very good players in all sports who are not good with the media. Um, and there are some who intentionally will inflame things because, you know, they find it funny. Um,
Marshawn Lynch, we're looking at you.
Freaking love that guy though. Love that guy. Um, did you see Chief's comment in response to
So
Kyrou?
yeah, so I want to follow up. So there was a follow-up interview. There was a follow-up piece by
Hmm.
Rutherford, and it very much read to me that, hey, you need to clean this up, right? And I think he was trying to do the right thing and cleaning up and explaining the context behind the piece, behind the quote that ignited things. I don't think the fans are wrong to boo players when they're underperforming and people are getting fired. But my issue is that I don't think it should have stopped at Kyrou, but that's neither here nor there. I think there should have been multiple players that had a fire lit under the ass and booed that night because
Right.
the coach was fired not just for one player, as you said.
Right.
I think the tears of Kyrou after the game was those of a young player who was absolutely shocked by the city and fans that he thought loved him, finding out how quickly you can become the villain. I don't necessarily know that it was one of those like, oh my God, I messed up in like right away. Like, I think it was more of a, I'm like legitimately shocked at what I'm going through right now and hurt. I think he did clean up those comments. I think he was, what he said after the game was what he should have said the initial time when people asked. And I thought he did very well after that. I hope it, and if his social media people, his PR people did not talk to him before that post
Right.
game interview, he did a hell of a job
Right.
doing
Well,
it.
and
But
the
I
other
think,
thought I had about his initial comment is, especially after reading JR's piece, is it wasn't even like I mean, anytime you're talking to the reporter, it's, quote unquote interview time, right? But it also was not like he was like up behind the podium taking questions. Like it sounded like it was in the locker room and JR was, talking to him at, getting information for a piece, right? And Kyrou was, doing whatever in the locker room, getting ready for practice or the game or whatever was going on.
It
I don't
was
even remember
after
what
the
day it
morning
was.
skate. It was
Yeah,
after the morning
right.
skate
After the
on
morning
game day.
skate. So, you know, there's also the aspect of mentally, like you have to like you and I know this from our jobs, right? Like you have to put on your game face for how to talk professionally to people sometimes, and depending on the situation, you may not be mentally prepared to think that way and talk that way. Um, and that was my other thought for it as well. Um,
I again, I'll go back to again. I think the bigger issue and the reason that it blew up as much as it did, because if Jakub Verana or somebody who like and some nobody made those comments, nobody gives a shit. The reason that this is a big deal is because they're all again, and Verana can't really make those comments. I don't. I assume he cleared waivers. I didn't see that
that's
he was
actually
claimed
exactly what I'm
anywhere.
looking up right now when you said
Um,
his name. I meant to check it when I got back.
but nobody would care, right? He can
Hmm.
say whatever the hell he wants. Like nobody's gonna cares because he's not getting paid $8 million a year, and he's not who people are looking at to help right the ship. The people that they're looking at to help right the ship are people like Bucci, Robert Thomas, Kyrou, the big guys, the big names. And Kyrou he needs to understand that. I think I don't think that Army and company put him in a good position. I still think that they gave out the contract prematurely or too big of a contract. I think Robert Thomas personally is worth every bit of his contract and will be. Over the coming years, he's going to be a discount. I think he has evolved every year as a player. I just don't see it from Kyrou. And I still think offensively, Kyrou will probably be close to a point a game player at the end of this season. So I'm
Yeah.
not even saying that he's not going to be a good player. I think because he does not fit Chiefs style,
Hmm.
because he made the comments he did, because he's already underperforming and is already the highlight and the person that many fans are pointing fingers at, all he did was give him the last piece of ammunition they needed to fire the gun to start booing on the ice.
That's that's
And,
how that's how I feel too about it. Like that's a great way of explaining what happened.
and again, I don't disagree with them booing him on the ice, but I don't think it should have stopped with him. There was a lot of players that if the puck touched their stick, they needed to hear that, guess what? You're underperforming too.
Hmm.
The problem is that I don't think most Blues fans are aware enough to be, booing those players as well. And
Hmm.
it is what it is. But I mean, our defensemen have been pretty shoddy themselves. I mean, Brandon Saad is not played up to his contract either. I mean, like goes on and on. Krug is we all know about that whole ordeal. Everyone
Hmm.
should at this point. So it should not have stopped with Kyrou. And you started to head into this, so I'll kind of touch on this. But I thought it was really interesting when Chief was asked about Kyrou, because when Chief was asked about Kyrou, it was the words of a coach who cares and loves his players, will never throw any of them under the bus, like at least not in that type of way, and somebody who knows how to deal and talk to the media, which obviously Kyrou maybe does not as much. Um, I also feel like, again, going back to his to that last piece on Kyrou is his post game comments when he was in tears and all of that stuff. Again, I don't think it was remorse for what he said. I think it was legitimate utter shock that a fan base could turn on him that quickly.
Right. Well, and I'm sure it was an offhand comment that he thought nothing of. And like, I don't even know if he was aware of all of it, like until after the game or
So,
during the game.
and I guess the beauty of being a professional athlete and making 8 million a year, after the post game skate, he took a nap and he didn't get up from his
Right.
nap till like 5 or 5:30 to head over to the stadium to get ready for the game. and when he woke up is when he saw
Right.
the post and how it had blown up. But I mean, like, God, I wish I could take an afternoon, go skate in the morning and take a nap. I should have been a lot better at sports or something, because I sucked. I definitely fucked that up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, sometimes you make bad decisions with your genetics. So there you go.
Don't disagree.
Um, as far as Verona goes, I don't think he was claimed, but I also don't see that we moved him because, right, wasn't that the point was that that they wanted to send him back down, and that means that you had to put him on waivers, and if he's not claimed, then you can do it. On the NHL's website, it doesn't like it still lists him kind of with the Blues. It's bizarre. It doesn't list him with any other teams. His last game is still that game against Chicago. Um, and when you look at news, it just like the last thing is like him being released. Um, so I don't know what's going on with him, but yeah, it
That's
sounds like
fair.
he cleared because there's no information saying that he was claimed by anyone.
It's fine. I'm scrolling through the Springfield roster really fast. He's on there.
Is he? Okay, there
Yeah,
you
he's on
go.
the Springfield Thunderbirds roster.
There you go. Now we
That
know.
took that wasn't that hard, John. Come on now.
I know. I don't know how to find the Springfield Thunderbirds roster, and I didn't even have that thought anyway.
I
So
I I just Googled Springfield Thunderbirds roster.
that's fair. I just looked up Jakub Verana news and saw nothing.
Yeah, that's also fair. There's not really much to report on him at that point. So,
Right. Um, yeah, I don't have anything else on the Blues. Like
all
I
right,
think
let's talk
that's
about the
pretty much everything.
Cardinals and lack of excitement there.
That's a good way to say it. Literally nothing has happened other than Tyler Glasnow, who we thought we might trade for, got traded to the Dodgers.
I have something. There was some news that just broke on the Athletic,
When
and
you say
that
just broke,
like while we've been recording,
oh, okay.
uh,
Yeah.
San Francisco is now out of the Yamamoto
Ooh.
sweepstakes.
And replaced by one St. Louis Cardinals organization, I'm sure. That's per our good friend Lars Nootbaar, who is also good friends with Yamamoto, and their moms are best friends, and texts daily trying to get him to come to the Cards, which I think is awesome.
We need more people like Newt on this. Again, he is. Again, he was one of the guys I've listed, and even in our roster construction, he is a not just a good clubhouse presence, but he is one of the untradeable people, I think, on our roster.
Yeah, I agree with that. I am very curious, speaking of Newt and Yamamoto, is I wonder if Yamamoto speaks English because I got the sense that they knew each other from playing in the World Baseball Classic earlier this
Yeah,
year.
that's when they met.
That's
Yep.
when they met. And Newt does not, at the time, did not speak Japanese, and I doubt he's learned it enough to be like particularly fluent. Um, but this is just a
I don't
thought
know if
I'm having right now.
Yamamoto speaks English or not. But I would be I'm intrigued to see their text conversations and what
Right.
Google Translate's pulling off.
That could easily be it. But also like
He could be
they have to
like,
have.
St. Louis has great food, and it translates it to like St. Louis wants to eat you, and he's like, I don't know about that.
I mean, they are Japanese. They might find that interesting. I mean, I don't know if you've ever watched Japanese TV, but it's different. Um, but I mean, they both have to have enough of a grasp of the other language to like communicate enough to be friends, right? Like, it's not like they have an interpreter right now at all times for them. I don't know, maybe. Well, I'm guessing Newt's mom speaks Japanese and she speaks to Yamamoto's mom a lot. But no, I think that's great. I like that Newt is recruiting for us.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's good. There's still a lot of rumors out there. I think again, we'd all love to see Yamamoto. I would love personally my two wants of players that are still on the market. as far as free agents, I would highlight is Yamamoto and Montgomery. I'm still not opposed to trading for like one of the Indians pitchers, whether it be Shane Bieber or blanking on the other guy's name, that they're dangling out there right now to potentially trade. And part of the reason that this is, and it kind of comes back, and we can go more in depth into this when we have more time to focus on the Cards, is the regional sports networks, namely Bally and Bally Sports, Diamond Sports, their owners going bankrupt, which has led Bally to slowly lose the rights for some of these teams. San Diego was a big one that was impacted this last year. MLB last year was covering, essentially reimbursing up to like 80% of what they would have made on their Bally stuff, but they're not doing that for this coming season. And there's still uncertainty on how many teams MLB is going to be able to package to sell to a deal to like Apple TV, similar to what MLS did for the MLS package.
Right.
And because of that, it's led a lot of teams to, at least that's the reasons that they're listing, is we don't want to increase payroll until we know what we're dealing with. The Cleveland Indians being one of those teams, actually Seattle Mariners
Guardians.
Cleveland Guardians. Yeah. Sorry. The Cleveland Guardians, they have a couple of good pitchers that they're dangling out in the trade market, potentially for a cheap return, that we should really look at, Shane Bieber being one of them. And then the other reason that you hear that Seattle Mariners have been linked to a couple of people. Everyone thought they would spend big to push them over the hill, but the regional sports network that was hosting their games on TV is now owned and controlled by them, so they're not getting any extra money out of that, and they're trying to figure out what to do with it. They ended up getting control of it, and so that's a big reason why there's potential for them to be trading people for more cost-controlled improvements. And so I think it could lead to some additional trades, and maybe I still think we need one more frontline starter. The last one that I'll list, and I'll keep saying it, is because we have these pitchers on 1-year deals with options for next year, club options, is Brandon Woodruff. Please, Mo, if you can get him signed at a decent amount of money, go sign the guy. We know he's not pitching this year, but I mean, if you're looking to build the team for 2024 and beyond, Woodruff is the guy.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, though, is like if you bring that in-house, like it's not like you're not getting any extra money if you sell, like you can still sell commercial rights, right? Like there are definitely ways to do it, and then you can control that. There's a very interesting quote from Manfred earlier this year, speaking about the regional blackouts, and it concerns the Cardinals. And he was speaking at, I don't know, it might have been the MLB draft, it might have been something, I don't know, some event. And this came up where he was asked about regional blackouts and how are you going to solve it? Are you going to do like a league-wide streaming service where every team, you can watch every game if you subscribe, blah, blah, blah. And his response was, well, let's take the St. Louis Cardinals. And he said, that's a fantastic market. Everyone knows it, right? It's a small market, but really probably more of a mid-market, but smaller end market with diehard fans that consume everything related to their team, right? As far as content goes. And he asked the crowd, what percentage of households do you think have access to watch Cardinals games in that market? And now I'm asking you, throw out a number.
Probably like 15, 20%.
First off, fuck off. You had to have seen this.
No, I mean, but I just think about how many people actually have access to Bally because it's posted in the Cardinals groups all the time.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
How do I watch this game without Bally?
The answer is 15%. And so at the meeting, everyone said, oh, 80, 90, 95%, right? Like it has to be. And his response was, yeah, try 15%. And he goes, if we can't solve that market, how can we have any hope at solving a lot of these other markets, right?
Yeah. And San Diego, Miami, Tampa Bay.
Minnesota, right? Like there are other markets that have this issue and don't have the fan groups that we have. So um, I do think a move towards like what MLS has with the season pass is probably the best thing for them. But we'll see. I mean, I would pay. I don't know if with all this uncertainty with Bally, because Bally, I think it was announced today, has come to an agreement with the NHL that they're going to finish out the season, but likely won't stream our games next year. And I just would like to have a longer term plan or understanding of what we're going to do to make my own personal buying decision on how I can watch the games for both Cardinals and Blues.
Oh, I mean, like I would cancel my current cable plan immediately if Bally. I mean, Bally's already work giving the rights back to the NHL teams and the NBA teams.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment they give it back for the MLB as well, like deuces, like I don't need you anymore. And
Right.
so it's literally the only reason I have them. I subscribe at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the only reason I would consider subscribing, but I don't. So
It, you know, it's a long story. I'm not going to get to why we have cable at my house, but
that's fine.
more importantly, my vote was to make sure like I had Bally to make sure I could watch Cardinals and Blues. And I won that argument, so I'll
There
take
you
it.
go.
Um, moving on from, there's not a lot much else to talk about with the Cardinals. Again, I hope that they figure out the regional sports network piece and we can kind of move forward in some respects. Again, I'm gonna waiting for your eyes to pay attention to me here for a minute, but I'm ready for the Dylan Cease for Nolan Gorman trade so that we end up with that frontline starter. And we'll kind of see what happens.
I was thinking about that today and how you were too chicken to make another bet with me about this. But did did we? I
No,
think
I
the
did not
last time
make
we
this
talked
bet.
about
I
this,
said
we
I think it's a
said,
50-50 chance. Like if they trade for a pitcher, it's a 50-50 chance.
right,
Like if it's a frontline starter, that
right.
Gorman goes.
I'm trying to decide if I want to cash my chips in when Gordman is still on the roster when he reports to camp or on opening day.
Yeah, I'm not making
So
a bet right now at this point
that doesn't
because I
matter.
think,
I'm just going to call you out on it.
yeah, well,
So,
while you're thinking about that, St. Louis City has been busy. So which I find amusing. I would also like it to make sure it's on the record. I was logged in to this call first in this jersey. So, and hat.
okay.
So, if anybody's copying anybody, you were copying me.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe
Hmm.
not. Maybe I was wearing this in bed eating my Lion's Choice before I came over here. You never know.
Yeah, now I just feel like I need to call Lion's Choice and ask if we can sponsor if they can still sponsor an episode for like $20. Lions
Right.
When John was eating Lion's Choice, he couldn't help but have that dripping, delicious piece of meat in his mouth, and then just
Yeah.
go from there.
Two things about Lion's Choice. Number one, not an ad, but they have the absolute best ice cream of any fast food restaurant, and I will fight for that. Like you, no, seriously, like you need to go there. Go there tomorrow after work. Go to the one by our houses and get a dipped cone. It is like a fast food game changing moment for ice cream.
I'll make a deal with you.
Tell your wife you're
I
stuck
will
in
eat
traffic.
it. I will eat it when you bring it to my house.
No, how am I going to do that? I can't hold a cone and drive. Can't hold two cones and drive. Like that's not going to happen.
They did not have cone holders. If they're so good, I feel like they should have developed.
Well, you can get the small one, but they do have a larger one, but
We'll go
irrelevant.
together. We'll go
Right.
together, and I'll let you
Yeah.
know what I think when I'm
Yeah.
while I'm eating it while you're driving, and then
Sure.
I'll eat yours too if it's good enough.
You won't. Mine will be gone before yours. But the other last not an ad thing about the Lion's Choice and me eating it, uh, I had a cup of cheese, like like a little cup like that big with a lid and all that. I put the lid back on, and I swear to God, my thumb went through the bottom of it and cheese like all ran out. So I was not wearing this jersey when it happened, thank God. But yeah, like just like exploded out of the bottom all over me. That was the last thing I had to say about Lions choice though. St. Louis City. We have a lot to talk about here.
We do have a lot to talk about. International roster spots. So we traded and maneuvered to get another international roster spot back. There was some speculation of what we needed it for. And then, of course, St. Louis City answers our questions. Lutz does not make us wait. He is quick to move, quick to action. What were the things you and I said that we really wanted to see them address this offseason, player-wise?
Defensive midfielder and fullback.
And what have we done so far with players that we've signed?
We traded for a defensive midfielder from DC. We drafted at least one midfielder in the super draft, although we did make 2 picks, and now I can't remember the second guy's name. And of course, it's not online easily for me to get, but we did make a second pick that I'm looking up right now. And then we did sign a fullback from Sweden.
We did. Yeah, so the
Thomas
fullback
Tutland.
from Sweden.
Oh,
Yeah,
he's a
so
forward.
Tutland?
No, the other guy we drafted, Brennan
Oh,
McSorley. He's a forward.
I'm like, what do you so anyway, so Totland, I think it's pronounced Totland. I'll have to figure
I
that
think
out for
so.
sure.
I think so.
Tomas. The exciting thing for me with this signing is if you read up on him, he's somebody who can play well as a kind of a wingback fullback on both the left and right sides.
Yeah, so Transfermarkt has him listed as a right back. Manuel Veth, who runs Transfermarkt in the US, did say that he could play both sides. In I don't remember if it was in their post on Facebook or if it was a quote from Lutz, but in one of those two official, announcement type things, the team did refer to him as a right back, which I thought was interesting. I do think so. He comes from Sweden, FC Hasken, if I remember correctly, who I believe won the top division in Sweden last year. They are playing in the Europa League, which is like the second tier continental league for Europe. He is playing a lot, or he was playing a lot in the Europa League. He started almost every game that they've had in the Europa League. He started a little bit less in their Swedish league play this year, but that could be because, like, I don't know, maybe he was injured. Maybe you want to save your best players for Europa League, but that I don't know. That's not really adding up too much. So I'm not sure. I do expect that he will come in and be the starter, whichever side they want him on, in my mind. That's not to say that
I,
it's like written in pen, but he's going to come into training camp the starter.
I think he will come into training camp as a starter. I think it's yet to be seen. I think whichever side is struggling is where they put him because he can play
Yeah,
both sides.
yeah.
I think I'll say Kojima, who was our first round pick, which I'm really excited after doing some more research on.
Mm-hmm.
He's a midfielder who can really play anywhere in the midfield. And from what I can tell, his highlight reel is exciting to watch, get you excited for a young guy. I'm interested to see. I assume they'll put him with City too, and I think he's somebody that'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see how quickly, if he earns a first team contract early, or if our midfield depth. And again, I think some of that midfield depth may be pendant on whether or not we sell any players
Right.
early, during that first transfer
Right.
window.
Well, and we also already have Tyson Pierce coming up as an additional midfielder too on a homegrown contract. The interesting thing that I wanted to mention about Kojima, I saw some highlight tapes for him too. He does look pretty sharp. Um, but if he is signed to City 2, he does not take up an international slot because the international slot is with the first team. So it depends on how they sign him. They've not announced that from what I've seen on what his contract will be. But if they sign him the City 2, that means we do still have that international slot. An observant listener might say, well, it's going to Thomas Tutland, obviously, right? He's from Sweden. He's Norwegian. He's been playing in Sweden. Well, he's a dual national. He actually has U.S. citizenship, so he does not require a an international slot. So we start the year with 8 international slots. Every team does. When the season ended, we had 8 international players plus 2 that are loaned to Europe and Isak Jensen and Selmir Pedro. So it could be that they're waiting until they see what the next year plan is for them since they were both signed to 1-year loans to their respective places, which we've covered previously. Uh, so we'll have to see. I'm very interested in that. I'm really excited for Thomas Totland, Tomas Totland. Did you watch the highlight tape that the team posted for him?
Oh yeah. No,
Yeah,
he's
that looked. I was really excited. He was great at finding the final pass for some
yeah.
excellent goals.
He I think he's gonna be really good for us. I'm excited about it. Again, going back to what Lutz had to say at the end of the season is that, this is a 5-year plan that they have in place.
Hmm.
And we're ahead of schedule because of how well things have come together,
Yeah,
but there's still work to do. And I think he's showing that, right? He's
yeah,
going out and looking for the players that could fill the holes and bridge the gaps that we need. I think Kojima is a potential, long-term fix for us. He's got some good experience. He looks great with what he's done.
hmm,
Totland has already proven that he can do it at a good high level.
yeah,
It's just bringing it over here. And again, ideally, filling in. Was it Totland that already has a US passport?
yeah. That's what I was just saying. He's a U.S. citizen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So because he's got dual citizenship or some whatever. So
yeah.
I don't know. So yeah, so that goes back to the international roster slot
Yeah.
stuff.
That
So
I literally said all of
I
that.
know, I had a moment.
That's fine.
Um and so I you know, I think he's going to be great. Again, I think it'll be really interesting. And it's been posted about, right? We've got the CONCACAF Champions Cup this season. We've got the US Open Cup. We've
Maybe,
got,
kind of. We'll talk about it.
we'll get into that more in a minute. You've got the regular season, obviously,
Hmm.
ongoing during that time. And then you've got the Leagues Cup. There's a lot of games to potentially be played this season. And if we can get guys like Totland to be able to fill in
Hmm.
and be able to give us additional depth, right? Because we already have a left back and Marcanic who we know can play. We've got players that can play right back well. We've still got Hebert who we can flex into center back or left back as needed. We're going to need that depth this year
Yeah.
and to keep people fresh. And I'm intrigued to see how it goes um, and how things play out. So
I do think acquiring Totland does move Hebert more squarely into the center back depth than the left back depth myself. I do
I
also
think the trade
think,
of Bartlett helps that as well.
yeah, and releasing John Bell and or not picking up his option but I mean Hebert was already the fourth-ish center back on the depth chart ahead of those two. Um, but I do think adding fullback depth makes it easier to keep Hebert in his preferred position. I do think that Marcanic kind of got a bit of a new team boost, if that makes sense. Coming out like I'm going to show Colorado that they were not giving me the chance that they should have, and blah blah blah. I do think his play tailored off towards the end of the season. So I am very interested to see how he comes out this year now that he's kind of settled a little bit. Um, but yeah, the one thing that I really liked that you said there was talking about the fixture congestion, because pretty much everything else that we have to talk about today has to do with fixtures and fixture congestion. And I think the best place to start with that is probably the US Open Cup. And
Before we get
specifically,
there, I think the back line, my projected back line, and we'll see how this holds true.
oh, you can't make a
Um,
projection this early.
yeah, defensive back line, I think we're gonna see um I think we're gonna see Nurk on the right. I think we see Totland on the left, and then I think we have Parker and Nielsen in the middle.
That's not a hot take.
I'm not saying it's a hot take. I'm just saying because you're talking about Marcanic being
Yeah.
potential. I think
I think that's everyone's projected. Maybe Watts instead of Nurk, depending on what they're going for. Um, but
and we could be wrong. Marcanic could find, maybe it's not a flash in the bottle, not a flash in the pan, and he's
yeah.
able to capture that and bring it back. But I
Well,
think
and if he
again,
does
having
that,
the depth.
then it's like, does Totland start over Nurk or Watts on the other side? It could go either way. I think it really does come down to what kind of camp Marcanic has. And I think that's going to be the determiner uh, for Totland. So, yeah. Anyway, US
I
Open
finished my
Cups. Now that you're
pint
done
of
with
bourbon,
your
by the way.
projections that are unnecessary,
Oh, I know they were
unwarranted,
necessary. They were unasked for,
unasked
but
for. Yes.
they were unsolicited projections that I'm giving you, courtesy of my self thinking that I know what I'm talking about.
Anyone who's ever had a conversation with you has heard an unsolicited opinion. So this will not be a surprise to our viewers.
I feel like if they're watching a podcast, they're solicited opinions at that point.
Well, for
It might be
them,
unsolicited for you, but you're a jackass, so I don't
no,
care.
anyone who's ever had a private conversation with you has heard an unsolicited opinion from you.
Hot take, you're not wrong. So it's not really a hot take.
It's not a hot take. Everyone
Everyone
knows I'm
already
right.
knows.
Yeah. If everyone has that opinion, it's not a hot take. Okay.
Uh,
Lead us into the Open Cup.
so US Open Cup, MLS decided to say, hey, guess what, US Open Cup? We understand that there's tons of tradition and history, and you guys are the longest running tournament for professional soccer in the US. We're going to send our second teams. So how about you don't talk to us anymore? Toodles.
Have a nice life. So, yeah, I think you hit the big points there. Very succinctly. I'm kind of proud of that for you. Um,
Had a little bit to drink, so
it's funny how much you improve when you've had some alcohol, right? Some liquid courage. Uh, yeah, that's the long and short of it. The first reason that MLS gave was fixture congestion, right? Which I kind of thought, like, that whole meme of we're all trying to find out who did this, right? Like with regards to the MLS season with their fixture congestion and their bonus tournament that they created with
mm-hmm.
Leagues Cup last year.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
but
was it the SNL where
yes,
the
yeah,
somebody
yeah, yeah,
shoot
yeah,
somebody, it's like, and he's
yeah,
holding the gun, it's like, who could have done this to our schedule?
right, yeah, exactly that, yeah. Uh, their second reason was that they wanted to, increase the level of competition available to the next pro players for development, which I agree with that. I really would like the next pro players and teams to be able to participate in Open Cup. Um, I do think that allowing next pro to play against USL is good for them. Um, they previously were at the same level as USL, and then because of changes in structure or whatever, they're now a third division instead of a second division league. Um, so I do think that would be good for the development of our players. That's the whole point of Next Pro. Don't think it's really panned out the way it was intended to yet, but we'll see. It's only been a few years, you know, kind of have to tinker. Um, Most importantly, though, I think this comes down to Messi. I think that MLS realized, like, oh, hey, Inter Miami made it really far in the Open Cup last year, and Messi signed with Inter Miami and was immediately in the Open Cup, and they became probably the two most watched Open Cup games of all time, right? But MLS is not able to capture that. They're not able to generate revenue off of that. And that's what it's about. It's about money. Um, there's other reasons, of course, that you can talk about if you'd like. So that way, I don't
I
have to
think
talk.
no, you're fine. I think Messi is a part of it, but I don't think that's why. I
Really?
think Messi's a part of it, and it actually you brought it up previously in a conversation I had, and I agree. It's the pitch quality. It's the potential for them to have to go to another place. It's the ability to, I think, for them to showcase their own product. And
Hmm.
if Messi gets hurt in the Open Cup playing some USL team, the MLS is going to be absolutely flipping furious
Right.
because people, if Messi's out and he's not playing, people aren't watching Miami games.
Right. I do think that's probably true for Messi. I don't I I think the pitch quality is a thing for like the MLSPA to be concerned
Mm-hmm.
about. I do think the Players Association is against participating in the Open Cup for that reason. On top of just like being tired from playing so many games. And I don't think the players necessarily like I don't think the Open Cup pot is very big. So I don't think they like make a lot of money from it.
Yeah,
Um, and like if you're an athlete, like you only have so many years of playing, and like after you're done playing, like your income, drops really dramatically for most athletes. So I don't blame them for being against it. I do blame the teams in the league for being against it though. I think it
I
also could
here
be
here
about
this is where the issue is. If you win the U.S. Open Cup, you win $300,000. I was like,
split.
you said that, and I was like, let me pull this up.
Yeah.
Split amongst your team does
Yeah.
not, I mean, like, and I'm not saying it's a small amount of money, but in the grand scheme of what
In the
we're
realm
looking at
of
here,
professional sports, that's a drop.
I mean, yeah, it's not worth it. Also, speaking of the realm of professional sports, I meant to bring this up earlier, as you were said that a single player doesn't get a coach fired. I'd like you to call LeBron James and tell him that.
Yeah. When you're arguably the best player in your sports history, I don't think the normal rules apply to you. I said arguably. I did not say he was. I said when you are arguably the best player, people can make that case for LeBron.
People do make that case for him all the time. I'm not going to say I agree with that case, and I'm not going to get into that right now because St.
We don't
Louis
cover
no longer
basketball.
has a basketball team because the Hawks aren't here anymore. So,
That's right.
um,
Not our problem.
but but I think there's a lot wrong with, again, it's not a lot of money, and that's what it gets down to is there's not a lot of money that goes around. The only thing good that comes out of it is the entry into the CONCACAF Champions Cup. And I think, realistically, you're looking at the leaving MLS teams in, and this is a huge reason why I think they should leave their first teams in it, is it gives essentially MLS one extra entry into the CONCACAF Champions Cup, which is the
Right.
biggest soccer tournament for clubs on our continent.
Right. I heard a theory today that because there's nine other spots available to MLS, that they're not really that concerned about giving up one. Um, Plus, they could potentially have the, benefit of saying that an ex-pro team made it and whatever, and like the media for that. Um, I hate it. I'm not a fan of it. I would rather see the first teams play. I'd rather see both teams play. Um, the two teams and the first team. Don't know if that's necessarily possible. I've heard a theory that they could just expand the MLS roster out to 60 players, and then that like solves the problem. And then you can just use the next pro guys in the tournament.
I
Uh,
think I think what would be best for the US Open Cup and MLS, if you're listening and you want to hire me to help run these decisions, give me a call. But what I think would be the best case scenario is to expand and give them flexible roster spots for these tournaments.
Right. Yeah, that's
Extra,
basically what it
I
is.
would say expand to 60, where they can, but not like a full team. So hey, okay, we'll give you 8 extra roster spots where you can call up next pro without having to necessarily sign them to a full
Right.
long-term first team contract.
Right.
That allows them a way to pull up these young guys, play more of these players, save some of the, especially early in the Open Cup, right? Later in the Open Cup, yeah, you're going to want your first team players playing. If
Mhm.
you're playing against other MLS teams and you're trying to actually make a run in this thing and secure a spot in the Champions Cup. But early on, when you're playing, Union Omaha, yeah, let some of your young guys play. Guess what? Your fans are still if your fans love soccer, they're still going to be there cheering you on. You and I were at the Union Omaha game
Yeah.
together. It was
Yeah.
our first game together, actually, for
Right.
Watch St. Louis City. And I say first game we went
Right.
together.
Right. We went
And
to almost every game that we went to. We almost both went to all of them together, or not together, but we both attended them.
yeah,
But that was the first one that we attended together. Um, the one thing that frustrates me so much about this is that like every team is playing, backups in the early rounds anyway, guys who are not playing in the league. So I don't really buy that whole fixture congestion issue other than like the coaching staff and stuff, who obviously have to give up their time and their attention for it. But like that game that we went to, like I think the only regular starters that played in that game, starters for that time, were Miguel Perez, who had been just bumped up because Blum was finally healthy. And actually, no, that first game was in April. It was when Blum was out the second time. And then Edu Leuven, who like basically insisted that he play the game. And so coach had to put him in. But no one else on that team was really a regular contributor yet at that level, at that like in league play. Um, that was the first time we were really exposed to AZ Jackson. We saw Celio play probably a better game than Jackson, actually, in that game, I felt. Um, John Bell played that game. Pedro and Jensen were in there. So like I don't buy that argument.
I I agree. And honestly, that's another for me, it's another reason to have to keep it. Another reason to keep the cup is to have extra minutes for these guys that maybe are
Hmm.
first teamers that don't get to play on a regular basis. And I think that's
Yeah.
so important. Again, the United States Soccer Federation respectfully is advising to decline this proposal, and I agree. I think it should be declined now. I think there could be, again, some middle ground. Maybe it's, I say 8, and it doesn't need to be 8. Maybe it's 4 or 5 additional spots where you can pull up some of your top talent to see how they play with maybe your second string of your MLS club in those early games and help with that. I think there's a lot of things they can do. And again, you and I absolutely loved seeing some of our young guys that we don't get to
Hmm.
see regularly get first team minutes
Yeah. Yeah.
for a game. And it was a blast to be there. And so I would love to see that again. You have players, Ben Lunt was great to be able to
Hmm.
see him get a game and a goal. Because I mean, let's be honest. I mean, games that truly matter, we want Berkey,
Right.
but it's good
Right.
to have Lunt getting minutes and staying sharp.
Well, and we are spoiled in St. Louis, right, with the US Open Cup because our city does have a very storied history in this tournament. So it does hit a little bit differently for us than it does for other teams in other cities. One of the things that has been said by a lot of people is, well, if you were, everyone's in uproar over this, but like the attendance figures for most teams during the Open Cup are not very good. And so, like, if you guys care that much, you should start going to the games and making it viable and making it like people realize, like, hey, you do really care about this. For us, I think that's going to be the baseline. That's going to be the expectation. But for some of these other teams, I don't think that's how it is. And it really should be if everyone's going to be that upset about it.
I honestly have concerns, and we'll talk about it more in just a minute when we get into more of the CONCACAF Champions Cup. That, yeah, this last year, right? We played Union Omaha and we sold out the stadium, right?
Right.
But
Set
is
a
that
record
going to
for that level of the tournament for attendance.
but is that going to continue to be the case? I don't know. And the reason I don't know it, and the reason I'm curious about it is the way that the CONCACAF Champions League draw and how the schedule looks, and ticketing and other things.
Okay, so just had to hit the pause button for a minute and don't remember what you said before that, because my phone just told me that everything we just said about Yamamoto is again moot because he signed with the Dodgers tonight. So that sucks. And now I'm sad. And I don't want to go back to talking about baseball. I just needed to correct it while we're here, because it literally happened
I
while we were recording.
I know where we were, and I'll reiterate what I was just saying on the other piece. We'll get back into it, but the Yamamoto signing sucks because it's the rich get richer. I
Yep.
mean, they're just LA is just signing everyone, and it's disgusting to watch, to be honest. It's not good for the sport, if you want
No.
my honest opinion. But we'll get into that at a later date. So what I was saying though is that my concern is, yes, we set this record in our opening season. There's so much love for St. Louis City soccer. But I mean, like, we saw it at the first home playoff game, right? You and I both
Hmm.
had playoff strips. We were lucky enough to be a couple of the people on the waiting list to be able to snag our playoff strips.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but then, we watched, and first, hey, we have our first ever playoff games. Prices skyrocket. Weather's going to be bad. Prices plummet, right? And it's something similar, I think, is happening with this CONCACAF Champions Cup, in that, I mean, this first game, I mean, there's still tickets available to those who are on the wait list right now. And I and inexpensively, right? I mean, the playoff tickets were
Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, double this price essentially. And
Oh,
um,
more, 2.5 maybe for me is what I paid for a very similar seat. I bought two tickets for $54. They are in this each $54 each. They are in the top section and they're not like front row or anything. But still, like, that's a reasonable price. Everyone complained a lot about how expensive tickets were last year and how they couldn't go to a game. Well, here's your chance if you're on the My City Plus, which a lot of people are. Um, I checked this evening a few hours ago, and there were still 7,100 seats available. So about a third of the stadium still not picked up. I do think that I think it'll sell out as we get closer. It is still day one. It's 3 months away. It's, you know, going to be
the
cold.
February,
It's February.
they're in the entire Champions Cup is all midweek games.
Right.
So like you're asking a lot for people to be able to get off work, get to the game, and I think that has
Right.
a lot to do with it as well. But just knowing that it's the biggest tournament, I think, again, the biggest club tournament on
Hmm.
our continent. My hope is to see, I think, some of the new and shiny wears off over
Hmm.
time.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a bad thing, especially for those people who maybe were priced out of being able to see the club play last year.
Yeah.
Maybe they won't be so priced out, and I think it may be maybe open up the doors for more fans to get to games, and I think that's great too. I'm not I'm not
Not
angry,
against it,
necessarily
right?
mad
But
about
I
it,
still
right?
want to put on a
I
good
think it's
showing.
good.
I want to sell it
It
out.
as long as we're sold out every game, I'm happy.
Right.
If we sell out and we have to, tickets at the resale market weren't 3 or 4, 10 times whatever it is, the
Yeah.
face value, let's do it. And again, I think the biggest issue with the CONCACAF Champions Cup draw is, and another reason that people are less excited about it, is that we drew Houston in the first round.
Right. Who we're going to play 2 times in league play, plus possibly Open Cup, plus possibly Leagues Cup, plus possibly playoffs. Like, in theory, it's possible that we play them, you know, what is that? They were already at 4. We could play them once in Open
Six
Cup,
times
5,
before the
6,
playoffs.
6 times before playoffs, 7 times if we, because you could hit them in the group and in the regular. I don't think we'd hit them in the group. So 6 times plus, whatever in the playoffs. Like, yeah,
And if you played them in the
that's too
first
much.
round and win all three, you could play the
Right.
same team 9 times this year.
Right. Like that's not interesting. So I do get that. And then to follow it up with the second round game is going to be against Columbus, whoever wins our matchup. So like that's also not great. And then depending on how Orlando does, because Orlando is probably going to win their first game. And then they could beat Tigres, right? I mean, they're gonna play. They could beat them.
It's
Then
why
it
we
could
play the game.
be
Anybody
that's
can beat
right.
anybody.
And then that's the third round against an MLS club. And at that point, the next round could possibly be against Inter Miami. And, it's possible for us to get essentially to the finals without playing an international game. And I get that that's less interesting to people, because that's part of why we love these continental wide tournaments is get to learn about these other clubs that we don't normally see and getting to play against them and really have pride in these kind of matchups. Another theory that I heard from a season ticket holder, was that they were worried about rotation, in this game, in this February 20th game. I don't buy that because of a couple of reasons. Number one, you already said it. It's the biggest tournament we could possibly play in, short of the Club World Cup, which is, this is a continental tournament. That's a global tournament. We're not going to get
You
into
have to
that
win.
now.
If you win this tournament, you get to play in that tournament.
Right.
It's the
Exactly.
easiest way to say it.
Yes. Yeah. There you go. Um, so, okay. So there's that. It's the biggest tournament, right? Okay. Two, so yeah, we are going to start off with like 4 games in 11 days, right? Well, this is the very first game. You're not going to rest guys for the very first game. Like that's not what you're going to do. You're going to start with all 11 of your best guys. Um and not only that, but technically this is our 2024 home opener. Like maybe not in league play, but it is the first game at City Park for the year. So yeah, I want to be there. And also because it's the first game we play in Champions League. We only get one first. You and I talked about it in playoffs, right? We didn't get to go to the first game at City Park for different reasons. But like, we were there for the first game in the playoffs, which was a really sucky game to go to, but we were there. And we're gonna always be
We
proud
were
of the
there
fact
for
that
the
we were
we were
there.
there for the first game for US Open Cup.
We were there for the first game for US Open Cup.
You were there for
Exactly.
the first home game for the Leagues Cup.
That was another sucky game. Also weirdly because of the weather and also weirdly because of the performance. I think I'm not going to go into that game right now. I would love to talk about that game, but don't have time for that.
Hey, do you know who looked great in that game?
I did.
Celio.
Oh yeah, I forgot he was there.
Celio Pompeo looked absolutely amazing in that game. Looked like he belonged, looked like a top tier player.
Sure.
Somebody who I think, with these rotations and things is going to get a lot more minutes this year.
I think so too. Speaking of the rotation though, one thing that is kind of nice. So we play February 20th against Houston in Champions League. And then we
Mhm.
play the 24th, I guess, the Saturday after that against RSL for our first game in league play. Well, we got
Mhm.
really, really lucky again, because RSL gets to be in MLS's like standalone opening game that they're going to do on Wednesday, February 21st. Miami is playing RSL. It's the only game that night. So, like, not only do we possibly have to play on short rest, but they also have to play on short rest and they have to fly.
Because did
So,
Miami get a bye in the first round? Is that correct? In
yes, they got a
the
bye for the first round,
the
for winning
Champions
League's
Cup.
Cup. Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
So yeah, I was like, wait, oh yeah, they got a bye, so that would make sense. But
right.
the other thing is the other piece that we have over Real Salt Lake there on that opening game is both of our first two games are at home.
Hmm. Yep.
We don't have to travel that week.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're playing two games in the week, but no travel. That's I mean,
Yeah.
people you talk to players, you talk to people out there, right? The thing that takes a lot out of a lot of these players is these road trips or these
Hmm.
traveling and the traveling all over the place. You play 2 games in a week and you don't have to travel. Okay, cool. Let's do it, right? And
Right.
so I think that helps. And then even the following week when we do have to travel, we're traveling to Houston. That's a
Hmm.
short puddle jumper flight down to Houston the next week. And we I believe our second game is also at home, correct? We start with 2 at home and then we go away. I believe the like 9th or something like the I think it's March the 9th, I think is our first away game.
Yes,
And so
that's an
so I
away
mean
game at
essentially,
Houston
yeah,
or at Austin. Austin.
we have I get it, right? We have 4 games in a span of, 10 days, whatever,
Hmm.
10, 11 days, whatever it comes out to be. But we're only traveling for one of them. And the one that we travel for is Houston, which is a
Hmm.
short flight down the road. I mean, it, it honestly played out very, very well for us in the way that the
Hmm.
draw happened. And I'm not disappointed in that.
Nope. Nope, not at all. And like I want to do well in this tournament. Like, yeah, I want to play international teams as well. But I want to do well and I want to play against good teams too. And I mean Houston's going to be a better team than a fair number of the non-Mexican teams are, right? Like that's realistic, that's accurate. Um, I'm not gonna lie, I personally, as a fan, am still a little gun shy of playing Club America. Thankfully, they're on the other side of the bracket, so there's only one way that happens, and that's a good problem to have is in the tournament finale. Um, but Tigres is on our side of the bracket. Monterrey might be as well. Um, so I mean, there's some good teams we're gonna have to play against, and yeah, but I want to play good teams. That's the point I'm trying to get at is I want to play good teams.
I do too. I think, like, again, you said earlier though that part of the appeal of these international tournaments is the ability to play teams and clubs and leagues that we wouldn't follow or pay
Hmm.
attention to normally. So the Mexican club, okay, yeah, we are aware of them, we know them, we follow them a little bit more. But that people from Honduras, play Cubs from other areas, it's a great opportunity for us to learn so much about them. And I think that that's at times gets maybe understated or lost, until you get to this piece, where things are kind of like a little more interesting.
Hmm.
So, other teams that are on our side, Monterey
Monterrey, yeah,
is
through
the other big one
Miami,
that is on our side.
Nashville, FC
Um,
Cincinnati. That that's
so, but
that's it.
Club America, and is on the other side. So I mean, I can't. The one team that we have PTSD from is not on our side of the bracket,
Right,
so can't
right,
complain there.
right.
And here's the thing, right? Um, I just want more soccer. I know you say, "Hey,
Absolutely.
I want to do well in the tournament. I want to win the damn thing."
That's right.
I would love nothing more than, especially after the showing we had in the playoffs and kind of flamed out, for
Hmm.
us to turn around and come back and win the Champions Cup would make that would, I mean, absolute dream right there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't care anything else that happened this season. We could go 2-30, or 2-32. It's 34
34
games,
game
right?
season. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Two and
so two and
32.
we go 2-32. We
Like
win
how about
Champions Cup. I don't care.
what if we went 3 and 31? And those three wins are one of the away Sporting Kansas games, the home Sporting Kansas game, and then also the home game against the Fire. Like, there we go.
Trade the home game against the Fire for the home game against LAFC, and I'm in.
Yeah. I mean, I want to beat
There's
LAFC, but I
something
also
sweet
really want to beat
about
the
beating
Fire.
LAFC.
It's just, well, okay. I think as a St.
We're
Louis
going to win
sports
more than
fan,
3 games. Let's be real.
right. Yeah. I mean, even like Colorado won 3 games last year, like Toronto won 3 games last year. So, like, yeah.
They won more than three.
Right, that's what I mean. They won more than
More than
three.
three. No, I'm
More
just
than
kidding.
three. But I think as a St. Louis sports fan, I think we are inclined to hate LA and New York because in most sports, the teams from those places throw their money around to get the best players. LA also throws great weather into it. You also have Stan Kroenke, who everyone knows that we hate. Um, in LA, like it's a natural
In
dislike
Colorado,
for
but
them. So I get it. I get where you're coming from.
I again, there's something sweet about beating. Honestly, if we won just 3 games the whole season outside of winning the Champions Cup, and those 3 games are just the 3 games against Sporting Kansas, sign me up.
You can hang your hat on that season.
That's a season you can hang your hat on.
That's right. That's right. Oh God.
Oh my
Okay.
God. So no, I mean, I don't have, I'm not asking for a lot here, just to win a giant and continental, you know, tournament and beat Sporting Kansas.
That's all you need. There's
That's all
nothing
I
else.
need.
That's my
Well,
Christmas wish list.
Christmas wish list. Tune in next week as we going to have some fun conversations about things that we want to see, both with kits and jerseys, as well as, some other ideas on what we'd like to see, maybe with TV deals and baseball, or, maybe we'd like to see the LA Dodgers get penalized for doing something illegal, because they've got to be doing something illegal. Um,
I think LA is probably lawyered up and doing everything in the rules, but I doesn't mean I like it.
More importantly, no matter what happens, we're still not in as bad a shape as the Colorado Rockies, or you know what? Why not talk about the Colorado Rapids? They're a pretty rough team, and they had a rough season. You just mentioned it, and you know who owns them?
Who? Enlighten me.
Stan Kroenke. Do you know who I hate?
A lot of people, but also Stan Kroenke.
Stan Kroenke. So with that, everyone, Stan Kroenke, we hate you. Good night.